there guys, gals, and non-binary pals, GM Potter here. Welcome to my channel where I review books and bookish things. And today I thought it would be interesting to go over a classic book that I feel not enough people have read, and that is A Clockwork Orange. I got this book through my local library via the Libby app as an audiobook, and I will say that I had tried to read it previously in paperback form from my local library, but I couldn't get into it. So I feel like the audiobook makes a difference in this particular volume. So let's get into it. So A Clockwork Orange came out in 1962. The audiobook is about 8 hours long. It's written by Anthony Burgess. It's told in a kind of dialect that involves Russian and kind of a English slang kind of mixed together. And it helps to listen to it, I feel, because if you read it just in your head and not aloud or listen to it, it doesn't make a lot of sense. That you get tripped up on the words that aren't English words. There are some words that are more of an onomatopoeia that are used in place of words, but if you listen to it, it makes sense. This book was originally published in the UK with 21 chapters, but the US version, and consequently the movie version, left off the last chapter, leaving it at 20 chapters. So they left off the ending, and per the author, 21 is considered the age of maturity in most of the Western world, and it's a significant number that he did. It's the book, the UK version, which is the version I read, is grouped into 3 subsets of 7 being a lucky number, and making 21 being the age of maturity. There are places where you can tell that the author could have divided up a chapter into multiple chapters or condensed chapters down into one chapter, but because the number 21 was significant to the plot of the book, he kept it that way. That being said, I read all 21 chapters. The last chapter, no spoilers, but the last chapter is where the growth happens, and the reason it was left off in the US version is because the US editor, the publishing agent, decided that it didn't feel authentic to the story, that the character growth that happens in the last chapter didn't feel authentic, didn't feel real enough, and so they left it off, and it's a horrible ending. That being said, let's get into the narrative structure. So it's an interesting narrative structure. It's told almost as though it's first person, and it's told as though the main character is giving an interview, and he addresses the audience directly and breaks the fourth wall. In essence, there is no fourth wall, because he's giving his own little tidbits and information and asides as he's going, which is really interesting. It's something I haven't seen very often in books. I have seen it before, and I have seen it probably done better, but it was done very well. The slang he speaks in feels both foreign and universal when it's read aloud, I feel, like I said before. Since the story is the product of his memory, the quote-unquote ultra that he engages in is told with a certain detachment that at once makes the reader complicit and disgusted by it. That there's an essence that he might be disgusted by it if he cared enough to remember it fully. Like, it almost feels like there's a restraint in it, that the ultra is almost glossed over in parts. That there's a section where he's committing an assault, and he's like, yeah, I don't have to tell you what I did. You know. And it's like, yeah, I can imagine. You go around literally calling your acts ultra, so I don't have to imagine what you did. I know what you did. You don't have to spell it out. I already know. It's sickeningly, it makes the ultra sickeningly palatable. The detachment makes it almost as though the ultra and the crimes that he's committing, because he is a hoodlum, shall we say, He's part of a little gang of hoodlums that go out and commit ultra and rob places and beat people and assault people and destroy property and life and limb and cause casualties. But the way it's told makes it palatable in a way that leaves you sick when you take a break from reading. Like I said, this book is about 8 hours in the audiobook, and I couldn't read it all at once. Like, I had to take several breaks because I felt myself identifying with the character in a way that made me uncomfortable. It's very character-driven, because it's first person, it kind of has to be. And the way it's written, the way it goes about doing all of these things is very sickening, because as you go on, you get used to it. It's almost like the theory that the body can endure lots of things over time, that I've heard financial people say that the reason lifestyle creep happens is because you get used to a lifestyle, regardless of the lifestyle. If you go from being poor to being wealthy, eventually you'll get used to the wealthy lifestyle. And it's kind of that feeling in novel form. There is a twist, basically, on what would be like the last couple pages. And it's just... I'm going to put spoilers in here, so if you don't want spoilers for the book, if you plan on reading it, if you don't want spoilers, skip ahead. I'll put a timestamp to where it's safe again, but you've been warned. So, the final chapter completely changes the tone of the book. So, in the book, he is left to take the fall for a home invasion and would be assaulted. A woman, she essentially has a heart attack and dies, and as a result of the home invasion, and he gets sent to prison. In prison, he's selected for a government program where they retrain his brain to feel physical illness at the thought of committing ulcers. He doesn't not want to commit these atrocities, he just can't. It's kind of like in Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Spike had that chip in his brain that made it so that he couldn't hurt good beings. And it's kind of like that. I think Buffy stole from A Clockwork Orange. Obviously, it couldn't be the other way around because this is from 1962. And so he does that, and he's taken in by this group of anti-government oversight people that are like, yeah, we're going to use your story, and then they realize that he's the one who assaulted one of their wives, leading to her. And so they basically lock him in a room with music. Music was used as the trigger to set off the conditioning. So they lock him in a room with classical music, and he's starting to feel sick and disgusted and all of these things, and he escapes by jumping out the window and essentially smacking his head against the concrete, unscrambling his brain. And in the last page of the 20th chapter, he says, yeah, I was cured all right, meaning he was cured of the cure. And that's where the US version and the movie version end. But in the UK version, in the original version of the book, there's another chapter where he goes out and he forms, let's say, he forms a new gang, and they go out and they do things, and he realizes that his heart's just not in it anymore. He's grown, he's nearly to 21, he's almost to the age of maturity, he doesn't want to do this, and he has a son now. He can't be doing this. He decides that he's going to work hard and be a good father and a good role model. And he realizes that much like his father had to make acceptance of the fact that Alex, our main character, had to go his own way, he understands and accepts that his son will have to go his own way. And that might be that might be something else, but his son is going to find a way to rebel and go his own way and become his own person. And that's the ending. And that's such a beautiful ending that this book is a fantasy. This book is a fantasy. It's a little bit of science fiction because of the government mind control and the experimentations, but I would say it's more a fantasy because of the cool, calm, collected everyone just deals with the ultra and the horrible things that everyone's just used to it, and just, yeah, this is gonna happen. I'm walking alone at night. Someone's gonna come at me. Like, the acceptance of it just feels like a dark fantasy. And the US editor felt that the original ending was too much of a fantasy ending. Well, the book, it doesn't have dragons and magic in it, But it's every bit of fantasy. That people can change, that people can do better, that people can become better. That's every bit of fantasy as dragons and magic and elves and wizards, I think. This book changed my perspective on a couple things. This book made me think about the ways in which we rebel against our parents. That even if you didn't have a quote-unquote rebellious phase, even if you didn't set fires for attention or something, you still found little ways to rebel against your parents. Say your parents wanted you to go to a Christian college, and so you went to a secular college. Even though you may have stayed at home during college, you still rebelled in that tiny, tiny way. That you didn't meet their pie-in-the-sky expectations. That maybe your parents are Republicans, and so you became a Democrat to rebel. There are little bitty ways that you become your own person, that in the instant that you decide to make the decision, the catalyst for becoming your own person, feel like a tiny bit of rebellion. And everyone has their own threshold for rebellion. That you have the people that go full on goth and emo and alt and subculture, and that's the rebellion. And then you have the people that go a different way, and maybe they become more conservative, or they become more, that they're still very much the parents in a lot of ways, but in the ways that matter to them, they're very different, and in that way they rebelled. I've known people who have done their best not to rebel in any way, and they don't feel like whole people. And I think that's one of the themes of the book, is the rebellion and the going your own way and becoming your own person. And while, yes, Alex, our main character, did that in a horrifyingly, violently, dangerously bad way, I'm not in any way justifying the character's behavior or his actions or his motives or anything. I'm just saying that the book made me understand. And like I said, he did it in a way that's sickeningly palatable, that I had to take several breaks while I was reading because I was identifying with the main character too much, and I didn't like that. Which I think is the hallmark of an excellent writer. That you have to become a whole and complete person anyway. You have to rebel. You have to go your own way. And I'm going to stop myself from saying that before I sound like I'm just regurgitating Fleetwood Mac all over the place. So I'll leave it there. Should you read this? If you can handle it, yes. If you have the stomach for the ultra, and know that it's not told in excruciating detail, but it is told in some degree of detail. It's a very interesting book. It's interestingly told. You have an unreliable narrator, which I think is lots of fun usually, and it's told in such a way that it needs to be read aloud like a bedtime story. And yes, this book is a fairy tale, but it's a German fairy tale. So should you read this? Yes, this book is 5 of 5 stars, absolutely brilliant. I'm probably going to look up more of what the author's written. So, have you read A Clockwork Orange? Did you see the movie? I tried to watch the movie. I could not watch it. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you're reading now. Are there any books that have just surprised you in the way that they make you root for a villain or an anti-hero? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.